This is Barbara Ware, and I know that you all haven't seen me in a very long time, but I am feeling well and much up to par, and am very glad to be here with you today because we have some very special guests that have come in to let us know something about our system of justice. And to my left, we have the Commissioner of the Police Department, Nassau County Police Department, Mr. Kane. And to my right, we have the First Deputy Commissioner William Willet. And we welcome both of you to the African American News. As you might know, that the African American News is part of a larger network called the African American Media Network. And our goal is to bring to you interesting stories, to promote economic development, and to enhance your information in the community. Today, I'd like to start off by interviewing Commissioner Kane by first basically saying, welcome, Commissioner Kane.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
And, most of us really... Today, we'd like to welcome our special guest, Commissioner Kane. Welcome, Commissioner Kane.
Thank you for having me.
Most of us in the community actually think we know what your job is and what your position is. Why don't you tell us what a Nassau County Police Commissioner's job really is?
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding, I guess, about what an actual commissioner does. This is not an unusual question, but people are sometimes surprised when I tell them it's more like running a business. We have some 4,000 employees. We have a vehicle fleet in excess of 1,000 vehicles. We have a budget well over $600 million, and all the associated problems with that type of numbers of personnel, and a responsibility to deal effectively with the legislature, county executive's office, minority affairs, the courts, district attorney, the judges, so on and so forth. So it's a very, very all-encompassing obligation. And certainly the most important, running a business is one thing, but this type of business, the police business, where we have the obligation and a responsibility to do the right thing for the community, try and preserve quality of life issues, and quote-unquote the old adage, protect and safety. Bottom line.
Well, now, how do you interface with other departments? Now, I know that you sit at the top, and I know you probably interface more on the legislative and state level, but how do you interface with other departments that are below you, like the different precincts? Do you actually get involved in precinct work, or does that go to Mr. Willet?
Well, both Commissioner Willet and I share a variety of responsibilities, and we're both concerned and deal with the various levels, if you will, within the department. Directly below us are 3 division chiefs, one who runs patrol force, one who runs detectives, and one who runs all the other service or support groups such as the academy and things like that. And within them, patrol force in particular has responsibility for all the precincts, has responsibility for highway patrol, and we have periodic meetings with them, direct, but more of the day-to-day handling would be by the chief of patrol, who has responsibility for all that.
Okay, I want to turn to Deputy Commissioner William Willet. How long have you been our Deputy Commissioner?
Well, I've been Deputy Commissioner for approximately 6 years. I was the second Deputy Commissioner appointed by Commissioner Kane when he took office, and he then appointed me first Deputy Commissioner after the Deputy Commissioner I had worked with retired. So now I'm Deputy Commissioner. What is it, Commissioner? About 3-4 years?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what is your main responsibility under Commissioner Kane's
Well,
leadership?
to assist Commissioner Kane, we hope we bring to the table for the number of years that we've been in the job, an understanding of the functions of the people who report to the Commissioner have the responsibility to carry out. And the Commissioner, it would just be physically impossible for him to deal with all of these things himself, because he has appearances and other things that he has to do for the department. So basically, we assist him with running and overseeing the command functions that report to him.
Okay. One of the other questions I'd like to ask is that how do you rate your effectiveness in or what is your mission as far as preventative measures in programming in local community-based organizations? I know that you're on a certain level, but you do carry the torch that speaks to the rest of the department. We know that there's a recidivism rate of incarceration. We know that there's a lot of particularly minority males that are incarcerated. And what do you feel about prevention? What is Nassau County Police Department doing in regard to prevention? And is it going to be a linkage with other organizations and agencies or a separate mission of its own?
Well, we're always concerned about trying to interface with the community, with other organizations that have a positive impact. Yes, there is a major concern on the part of young people getting involved, but we have things we're doing in particular. One of them obviously is the DARE program that we involve, where we come in and talk to the school children in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades and put on a program regarding or trying to encourage the youth to resist involvement in the areas of drugs. We have a community service division, community relations group of people who go out and speak at various functions to try and spread the word and let people know what kind of programs we have. And I think more practically, what we've been doing in the last couple of years in both Roosevelt and Newcastle, we've put a much greater presence in the community. We've put foot patrols out, we've put bike patrols out, trying to bridge that gap between the police and the community and let the community get to know our personnel better. And I think if we understand each other's goals and objectives, we're all going to be better off for it.
Well, I'm one of the people that believe that economic development, housing, poverty are all causes for potential crime elements to exist in that environment. Does the Nassau County Police Department interface with other Nassau County agencies to put together a holistic plan to approach this and target this on a cooperative or collaborative situation? Meaning, are you working with places with housing, building codes, substandard landlords, no jobs, no heat? When you have a frustrated population of poor people, you're going to breed a criminal element. And I don't see this kind of collaboration going on. Are there any plans to make movement in that direction?
I would like to say, if I might, we have assigned in Roosevelt and in Newcastle a select group of police officers headed up by a supervisor. And what you're talking about is at the basis of an overgrown lot where everyone dumps their garbage.
Yes.
Unless you have the town, the sanitation people from the town involved with you. And then that lot stays overgrown and the grass doesn't get cut. And it's a blight on the community. Where the cars are dumped on the side streets. Our cops placard it with a yellow placard, which you will see, and then they notify the town. This car has to be removed. Okay. So in these two particular areas, and I can tell you that is actually functioning.
Okay.
With Inspector Skeller and Inspector Tuller.
Okay.
And without it, the programs
both I just spoke to, right?
The programs would stifle.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that because I think that the community needs to know that there is something being done. Now, the community also has a responsibility. If you dump your cars, leave your trash, and do all of those other things that you know is putting a blight on your community, then you've got to talk to the people who are doing it because we all have our each individual responsibility. Now, leading up from what you said, we'd like to go into a little bit of called weed and seed because you talked about the blight and you talked about the grass growing too high and it getting cut. Well, Weed and Seed happens to be something that is coming into the communities of Roosevelt and the community of Newcastle. So, Andreas, do you want to just speak a little bit about Weed and Seed?
Yeah, since the first time we met Commissioner Kane at the Julius Irving fundraiser at the Marriott over here, and then we met him at the groundbreaking for the Roosevelt PAL, he seems to have a different kind of approach. I had asked you about the crime bill, and you too many people weren't aware of it, but it seems that you have a great concern about youth. What makes you so different from the past as opposed to what you're doing right now? Why do you approach it in the manner that you do? You seem so involved. Why is that?
Well, I think this is, first of all, I've been in the business for 39 years. I came into the police department in 1959, and I come up through the ranks, and I had the opportunity to see the job develop and the Long Island community change, and I think now that I've been commissioner since 1992, now you have the opportunity to make things happen. Regardless of how you felt about it before or where you were working, now when you have that opportunity to do something, I think there also comes an obligation to do something. Fortunately, you know, Commissioner Willet and I have worked together since the old days in the precinct. He was my sergeant, as a matter of fact. We share a lot of concerns. We socialize, we play golf together, we do a lot of things together, and I think he's been a partner, you know, in helping me try and move things in the right direction. We had some, I think we had a conversation about 3 years ago with a fellow by the name of Lenny Cobbs, who was a retired detective from our job. And we're up in Newcastle, and we were talking about the general problem where a call would come in to 911, and our people would respond to it, we'd take care of whatever the problem was, and we leave. And we kind of, you know, realized that that's not going to make things change. You know, coming in, putting on a fire, and leaving is not going to make a change. We have to have sustained presence in the community. We have to build relationships with the community leaders. And when something goes down, it's not a matter of finger pointing at each other. We stand together. We stand alongside of each other. Things we're doing here this morning, being able to sit and talk about programs, I think are things that we are all concerned about. And certainly the police department is part of the community. I don't know that we've been recognized as that in the past. And I think, as Commissioner Willet said, things that are being done in the 1st Precinct by Inspector Skelly and his people, and certainly in the 3rd Precinct, Newcastle area, by Inspector Tully and his people, have gone far above what had been done in the past. I think we are making a difference.
Now, like Barbara Ware spoke about the Weed and Seed, there is a significant amount of money that's going to be available to grassroots organizations as well as community-based organizations. Now, a lot of people know that a lot of good things have been done about the relationship that exists, like you just spoke, between the police department. People want to really know, how is the relationship going to continue in the event that these monies are brought to the community? Where is that money going to be spent, and what is going to be your part in making sure that organizations who would write a good proposal for that money would be able to receive it?
Okay. Well, the Weed and Seed concept is a partnership by design. The weeding aspect of it is the responsibility on the police department to come in and try and clean up problem areas, to address public sale of drugs on the streets, and take care of things from the law enforcement end. Once we get a hold in the community, shall we say, and try and improve the quality of life, then the seed portion of the money comes into play to try and rebuild certain things, or invest in youth projects and so on. Now, many of those concepts will be dictated by the grant people. We're looking at 2 separate grants, one for Roosevelt, one for Newcastle. There's community involvement in both areas, and there's, I believe, a total of $250,000 potential in each of those 2 communities for funding. There's also a separate grant being applied for, and it sounds very, very good that it's going to go through by the Village of Hempstead. So we'll have a lot of money coming in, and the partnerships will go forward and try and work on projects, but the projects have to be approved, as you said before. Different community action groups will be part of it. The U.S. Attorney's Office has a representative in the committee formation, and there will be everything that we do will have to be approved by the government because we're going to be using their money.
Well, on that note, can I just interject about the COPS proposal? Now, the COPS proposal is an initiative that's also going to be coming into some communities, as I understand. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
The COPS proposal.
Where we bring police officers on?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Go, Commissioner.
We have received some federal assistance in the past year, and we have a pending grant for 1998. And what it allows us to do is to hire additional personnel beyond normal attrition rates. We lose X amount of people, we try and restore them through budgetary process, but the Cops Ahead program, which is really what it's called, allows us to hire in addition. And I believe we have a grant this year for some 90 police officers, and we're hoping to hire them certainly over 100, if we can. We'll use some of the budget money and some of the grant money, and I would hope to see additional police officers coming on the street. We have 2 classes, matter of fact, graduating this year. They started in August and October of '97, and we have our first graduation, I believe, set for March 25th, and then the second half will come on the street sometime in May. So we'll see a significant influx of uniformed personnel.
Have you ever thought about putting a part of young cadets or something that's similar to that for the police department? Because I don't know if there, and I'm sure there isn't a significant number of minorities who are going through the police academy, and it's usually by the time they get to be 16, 17, and 18 to make these decisions, there's some factors that have gotten in the way. Some priors, some felony arrests, some no license, some DWI, or just remedial educationally. Is the police department addressing any of those issues to get more minority candidates? I know you have in the past, but what we've been doing hasn't made any significant numbers.
Right.
What is it that we can do now that can start with, I mean, the Marine Corps and what they have, the ROTC.
Hempstead has the police aid program.
Police aid program. Can we not find some of that Cops Ahead monies or some of the monies that can be directed towards putting together a young cadets program?
Well, we have a couple of titles. One in particular is Traffic Enforcement Aid, which is an appointed position, civil service. Does not involve a test, and we've made, I've talked to some of the people in the minority community who have had openings to try and get people in that. But on a cadet program itself, we spent, in our recruitment process for the last exam, we spent somewhere in excess of $1 million in recruitment and trying to increase our minority representation. And I dropped the I dropped the age of taking that exam to age 17 to try and accomplish what you were saying here, so that we can get people as soon as they come out of school, before they get involved in other endeavors, we can get them to take the examination, be a viable candidate, and by the time the processing all takes place, to be close to the 21 years of age to come on anyway.
True.
Unfortunately, the numbers, particularly in that, after the exam was over, we looked at the 17 to 19-year-old age frames. If we had enough people in there where it would be worthy of starting a program, a cadet program, we would have done it. Unfortunately, we didn't get the results that we had hoped for. We just had a meeting, Commissioner Willet and I had a meeting yesterday with the president, current president, and vice president of the Guardians Association, which is the Association of African American Officers that not only spans Nassau County, but it spans all the village police departments. And we were talking yesterday about potential what we have to do is to bring qualified candidates to the table. You know, the days of going out and recruiting and just grabbing people off street corners and getting them in to take an examination, if they're not really viable candidates, is wrong. It's a waste of the community's time, and it's a waste of our time. We have to do more recruiting, I think, in colleges. We have to do more recruiting in areas where we can bring those competent, capable people to the table, be more competitive, and be more successful. We were just looking at the list yesterday. In the next 300 eligible candidates on our promotion list, there are some 50 out of 300 that are African American. Now, that's a raw pot. When we get into that pool of 300 candidates, we find some people are no longer interested because the exam was given in '94. We find people who may be physically incapable of doing the job. We find people who wash out for other reasons. So how many of those 50 will survive in the next 300 that we decide to put on? But it looks like we're going to have hopefully a little better numbers, better representation within the next year or two in the people we put on and we have in the past.
Well, bringing that up, the representation, could you tell us, since Mr. Delata just appointed a bias unit to your office, what is the function of the bias crime unit of Nassau County?
Okay, for a number of years, bias crimes, whether they be racially or religiously motivated, were investigated by the individual precincts. We have 8 precincts in Nassau County, and those crimes were investigated by the individuals. And the philosophy there was that most of that type of conduct is done by young people, and the people who work in the individual precincts probably have a better handle on who the players are, so to speak, in their community. We had some conversations with Mr. Galata and with some of the people who were involved in these investigations. We felt that just having one individual monitor these different things through the 8 precincts would be much better if we put together a group of people who would be able to go out and actively investigate. Because you may have an individual who lives in one community committing acts of bias in another community, and maybe on their way to from work. So even though they reside in the South Shore, they may be involved in things up on the North Shore. So by putting a central investigatory group together, they have the ability to overlook the entire county, and they're actively involved in the investigations. We have a female African American, we have a Hispanic, and we have a Jewish officer, because they seem to be the targets of most of the bias incidents. And they've been working out very, very well. We've had very good results, not only in apprehensions, but I think on a part of the community, seeing that there is somebody dedicated to trying to resolve those problems.
Well, I have to make comment on that because in Roosevelt, since we're about 90% black, the rest Hispanic, and we may have 10 Euro-American families who live here, bias crimes is not our problem. Yet when you tell me that $1 million was spent to recruit minority officers, then I have to wonder why, because there are plenty of community-based organizations that if they got a portion of that money could do the remedial, tutorial, put these people from pre-employment services, from welfare to work, all the way through to that police academy. So I have to say that as with the taxpayers' dollars of $1 million, if we're using public relations firms, if we're using non-minority people, if we're not utilizing the school district and giving them money to do it, if we're not utilizing community-based organizations to do it that have been successful. See, we have to now in 1998 distinguish who has been successful in operating these programs and who has not. If we know that the statistics have not changed and they've been a dismal failure, then we have to know that that money cannot continue as taxpayers' dollars to go to that same organization. Like I have to say, and I'll say it publicly on camera, the youth board is well overrated. Okay, our youth are drowning, and that is a multi-million-dollar structure. Now we've got to take a handle on Nassau County We've got to take a handle on taxpayers' dollars, and we really have to make the concerted effort to make change. And in doing so, it can't be isolated. The police department can't be isolated from the community, the district attorney's office, and in fact, you've explained to us today that you are not. Therefore, it is incumbent upon you and the other departments to get together and to put together a holistic view. When you spend $1 million on recruitments and you put it on the side of a bus, that's not reaching the people that are in the community that don't ride the bus, that don't even read the bus. You have to go where the people are that you wish to recruit. And that's called marketing and targeting the market. And the people who make decisions on how to best get to those people are the people themselves. Not leaders who sit up at the top and who don't always know, but do their job there. But it has to have the trickle-down theory to the people in the community, to mothers, to parents, to teachers, to guidance counselors, to career assessment centers, to places that have a new aura about them. And that's what we're asking for. We're asking 1998 to be new and to be fresh. Kick off the dust from all these other agencies that do not work. And as a citizens advocate, I will be doing a political scorecard. I will be doing a scorecard on agencies and their effectiveness, because I'm tired of my tax dollars and our listening audience tax dollars, viewing audience, going to waste on programs that are not succeeding, and we're spending millions of dollars.
May I
That's
say
the question. What is the
Yeah.
future plans? Do you plan to work with like a minority-owned newspaper like the Community Journal or the Point of View or the Citizens Advocate radio broadcast in the future? What is the future plans of the police department in regards to dealing with minorities, not just for partnerships in policing, but as well as the outreach to get those kind of candidates, as well as to better the black community? What are the future plans?
Well, bottom line to what Andreas is saying we get asked to volunteer. The minority community gets asked to volunteer. Can we help you? Yes, and we come around the table and we volunteer, while European Americans and companies get paid. We're always the ones asked to volunteer with the least amount of resources, but European American companies get paid. Okay, so we want to say it's time for us. If you're putting our tax dollar out there, it's time for us to get a piece of the pie on both ends.
Right.
To recruit for our community and to also be paid for something that it is that we do that's done well.
Because
You know we understand exactly what you're saying.
in Weed and Seed,
Okay.
there is an economic development.
Yes, true, and I'll let the commissioner address the more specific areas that you mentioned. However, I would be overjoyed to know that in Roosevelt or Newcastle, and I always say, our best recruiters are in that community. Because they either turn those kids on or they turn those kids off.
It's true.
And right now, they've been off. They gotta get turned back on. Some of the better kids are not coming to the police department because of the bad press. We're gonna say it like it is, and that's the way it is. And I would like to see that change. And I would be the first one to say, if there's people in the community gonna do that, yeah, maybe through Weed and Seed or wherever, maybe some of these programs can develop. You know we don't control the money,
Right.
okay? The commission certainly doesn't, he hasn't given me any of it if he has. Yeah, and we're in agreement because we want cops.
Right.
We need cops. And in communities like you said, how many Euro-Americans here, then they want to see some cops that reflect what they look like. Okay, not that we can't have other cops, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, and the commissioner and I often discuss these things. We're not in disagreement with you. We don't control certain things, however. But anything that can help us to recruit, and it is dismal. I'm 44 years here. I was the only one in the class of 125 people. You don't see it changing, but up until just recently, and I would come to an induction of police officers and I would see 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. That's progress to me, maybe not to you, but from
No,
what
I
it
see
used
it
to
as,
be.
I see it as
You
progress,
follow
but
me?
I also know that in the community in which I live, I've been in Roosevelt since I'm 13, I'm 42.
Right.
Okay, there's 3 generations of us here, and I'm not going anywhere. So I see the changes that are being made, but I'm just saying we're asked always to come to the table with nothing to give our resources and our sweat equity, yet we are never economically developed to the point where we get some of the funding to do that. And then another group will sit around the table who knows nothing about this community and get paid to do what they think that will benefit us, and it doesn't. So that's some of the things I think we just have to stop, because that's what's really happening.
I think, to be honest with you, we're going in a different direction, because the police department is not the cash cow. The police department does not provide funding for social service projects throughout. We fund police involvement. We apply for some grants that indirectly will benefit the community, but our budgetary process is primarily to protect and serve. And where we did spend money on recruitment, we think the money was well spent. We did interact extensively with school districts, with people who we felt, as Commissioner Willet said, would have the ability to turn more candidates on, turn more people's head, make them interested in police. And we did work very closely with those groups. Where exactly the money went, some of it went to advertising. But bear in mind that during that recruitment process, we were in the midst of a affirmative action process with the Justice Department, and some of the funds were dictated as to how we were to spend that money and what efforts we had in the recruitment process. And I think we did a very good job. But again, it was not some funds sitting there that we could say, okay, let's give $20,000 to this group or $50,000 to that group. It just doesn't exist. That's not part of our budgetary process, and that's not part of our responsibility. We'll work with all the other agencies to the extent that we can. I think we've been doing that all along, and I certainly would say publicly and make a commitment to you that that will continue to the extent that we can.
Well, now, do you feel frustrated when the places that you go to for this recruitment don't come through? Do you find, I'm seeing that you're asking, people to recruit and refer people for jobs, and are you getting the cooperation from the community?
Well, I think so. I haven't had anybody turn us down, so to speak. Every time I've interacted with a group, they've been very positive. However, even though we line candidates up, many times, by the time the exam is given, they don't show. They just don't come to the table. Now, I'm frustrated. Yes, I am frustrated. We've been trying for a long time to get better representation. I think it's important. We have, I don't know, was it 8% of the population now in Nassau County is African American, or maybe more, and only 3.5–4% of the population of the department is African American. Now, that's not right. I think we need to increase those numbers. I think we have increased them. As Commissioner Willet said, he's seen where we started from and where we are today, and I think we're moving in the right direction. But no, I'm not satisfied, and I am still frustrated to a certain extent.
Well, I thank you, Commissioner Kane, and I thank you, Deputy Commissioner Willet, because this explained a lot of how the police department works to our viewing audience. We don't always know. We just think we know how things operate, and I appreciate your candidness. And I want to say to the community out there that we need to work with this commission, both of these commissioners here, to get police cadets, get people prepared to become police officers in our own communities. It's most important, and if they're reaching out and spending $1 million on campaigns that are tax dollars, if you're not doing your job by referring and making this a concerted effort, take 1 month out of your year and make it Police Recruitment Month so that you're getting some quality candidates. And if they need tutoring or tutorial services, use your public library. Can you give the viewing audience, a telephone number where they might be able to call for, cadets or finding out more about the police department?
Well, there's an 800 number. I don't know it off the top of my head. I think it's 1-800-RECRUIT, but certainly our main number, which give you access to our recruitment section is 573-7000. That's the main switchboard, police headquarters, and any information they need. And certainly my staff, Commissioner Willett and myself, are always available to meet with different groups, and any way at all we can try and help, we will.
I want to thank you both for joining us today on the African American News. We want you to watch African American News upcoming every day, 8:30 a.m. in the morning on Cablevision. I also want you to remember that what we discussed here is important to our community. Weed and seed is very important. We're going to be watchdogging how the community is weeded so that we don't just see all of our brothers and sisters going just to jail, that there are other programs that are available. Look out in your community for new programs. Follow the African American News. Follow the African American Media Network. The African American Media Network, where we are all coming together in equality and justice. This is Barbara Ware with the African American News. We thank our commissioners for being here today and look forward to seeing you on a new day. Have a good week.